The galaxy is old, its empires are powerful, and its wars are endless. Humanity stands. These are the Empyrean Chronicles.
The Long Way Around. Part 1, The Trap. The ambush was elegant. Admiral Yun Hai-wan had been in fleet engagements for 23 years, and she could appreciate elegance even when it was being applied to her destruction. The Varath had seeded the Kalarath Passage with debris, not random debris, not the natural scatter of an old collision field, but carefully positioned mass designed to channel a fleet into a narrowing corridor while appearing to every sensor suite the USEF had deployed like an unremarkable stretch of navigational hazard. Her navigator had threaded the Indomitable through the outer debris field on a course that looked efficient and safe. It was neither. They came out of the compression point, the place where the debris channels narrowed to a width that forced her fleet into a column rather than a spread formation, and the Varath were waiting on three sides. 31 vessels, her fleet numbered 19. "Contact," said her tactical officer, Commander Bryce Halloran, in the voice he used when the situation was extremely bad, and he was managing his own reaction to it. "Bearing 270, positive elevation 30 degrees, and bearing 090. We're flanked port and starboard, debris field behind us." "How long to reverse through the compression point?" 11 minutes at current drive capacity. They'll be on us in 4. Yun looked at the tactical display. 31 against 19, flanked, in a column that stripped her of the ability to concentrate her fire effectively. The Varath had positioned themselves to prevent her from forming any offensive geometry at all. She could not go back. She could not spread. She could go forward, directly into the largest concentration of Varath vessels, which was almost certainly what they expected her to do, and therefore, what she was not going to do. "All stop," she said. Halloran looked at her. "Admiral, all stop, every vessel, now!" The fleet decelerated. Around her, she could feel the Indomitable's drives cycling down, the slight shift in the ship's movement that told her 19 vessels were suddenly sitting still in the middle of a debris field with 31 Varath ships closing from 2 directions. "They'll think we've lost nerve," Halloran said. "Good," Yun said. "I want them thinking. Thinking takes time. Time is what I need." She pulled up the debris field map and began to look at it in a way she had not looked at it before, not as an obstacle to navigate around, but as terrain. "Get me Lieutenant Commander Foss, and tell engineering I need maximum output from the lateral thrusters in 30 seconds. The Varath closed. Of course they closed. A stopped fleet in a debris field was an invitation, and the Varath commanders were experienced enough to know that hesitation cost more than caution saved. Their port and starboard elements accelerated, tightening the flanking envelope, moving to achieve the kind of overlapping fire positions that would make the USEF fleet situation irrecoverable. They were not wrong to do this. The situation was close to irrecoverable. Yun was working on the gap between close and actual. "Foss," she said, when her navigation specialist appeared on the secondary screen. "The debris field, the outer band, bearing 180 from our current position. What's the density?" Foss pulled up the scans without being told what she was looking for. This was why Yun had asked for her specifically. "Outer band is navigable, Admiral. Tight. I wouldn't take a fleet through it at speed without significant risk of collision damage, but at low speed with careful spacing." "Not at low speed." A pause. "At combat speed, Admiral. The collision risk is..." "What is the collision risk?" Another pause while Foss ran the numbers with the expression of someone who did not enjoy the numbers she was running. "At the speeds required to break contact before the Varath flanking elements close. Approximately 12 to 15% probability of significant collision damage per vessel transiting. Some will take hits. A few may take serious damage." "And if we stay?" Foss did not answer that. She didn't need to. The outer band leads where? Yun said. Around the debris field. It comes out on the far side, bearing 165, approximately 40,000 kilometers from current position. It's the long way around. How long? 14 minutes at combat speed. And the Varath, if they pursue through the main field... The main field is denser. Their vessels are larger than ours. They'd have to go slow or take worse damage than we would. Minimum 22 minutes to transit, and that assumes they follow immediately. Foss was starting to see it. If they go around the outer edge instead, they have to go around the long way, which means going around the other side, which adds distance. Call it 35 minutes minimum before any Varath element can reach the exit point. We'd have 20 minutes on them at the exit point. Maybe more. Yes. Admiral. Foss looked at her steadily. The outer band is navigable. It is not safe. At combat speed in column, with the spacing required to avoid the worst of the debris... I know, Yun said. Get me the course. Part 2. The run. She told her fleet captains in 60 seconds. Not because 60 seconds was enough time to fully explain, but because 60 seconds was all the time she had, and her captains were experienced enough to understand the essentials. We go through the outer debris band at combat speed. We follow Foss's course exactly. We accept the damage risk. We do not slow down for anything short of catastrophic drive failure. Captain Adai Zanwosu of the Relentless asked the question Yun expected. And the vessels that take serious damage in transit? Keep moving. We render assistance at the exit point, not before. A silence on the fleet channel that lasted almost long enough to be uncomfortable. Understood, Nwosu said. The others confirmed in sequence. Yun noted each voice and held what she was feeling about sending her people into a debris field at combat speed in the part of her mind where she kept the things she would deal with later. Foss, she said, take us in. The outer debris band of the Kalarath Passage had been formed, some geological age ago, by the collision of two bodies large enough to have been planets if they had ever achieved stable orbits. What remained was a ring of fragments ranging from dust to rocks the size of buildings, spread across a band approximately 8,000 kilometers wide, loosely structured enough that a careful navigator could find paths through it, and dense enough that a careless one could not. Foss was not careless. She was also not, by her own assessment, entirely confident, and she flew the course she had calculated with the focus of someone who understood that the 19 ships behind her were following her decisions at combat speed with no margin for correction. The Indomitable took the first hit 4 minutes in, a fragment the size of a ground vehicle, spinning on a slow axis that Foss had classed as clearable and had been correct about for 93% of its trajectory before a secondary fragment clipped it and changed its path. The impact took out a sensor array on the port side and left a dent in the hull plating that would take a repair yard to fix properly. Keep going, Yun said, before anyone could report it formally. The Harrier, 3 ships back in the column, caught a larger fragment at the 6-minute mark. Not a grazing hit, a direct strike on her forward section that blew out 2 compartments and killed 4 people and left her drives at 80%. Her captain reported it in the same flat voice Halloran used for bad situations. Keep going, Yun said. Behind her, on the tactical display, the Varath flanking elements had reached the point where her fleet had been stopped and found nothing. The response had taken them 90 seconds. 90 seconds of reassessment before the Varath admiral had understood what Yun had done. The Varath were now moving to pursue, but the main debris field was between them and her fleet, and the main field was not the outer band. The Varath went around. Of course they went around. Their vessels were larger, the main field was denser. A Varath admiral who sent 31 ships through that at speed would arrive at the exit point with significantly fewer than 31 ships. The long way around added 23 minutes to their transit. Yun had her people count it. At the 9-minute mark, the Constance, 6th in the column, reported a drive failure on her port side. not catastrophic. She could still move, still maintain column speed, but the margin for error on her navigation was now thinner than Foss's course allowed for. Her captain, a woman named Kira Sable, who had been flying combat vessels for 16 years, made the adjustment without being asked, widening her spacing slightly from the ship ahead, accepting a fractionally higher debris risk on her starboard side to compensate for the reduced drive response on her port. Yun watched her do it and said nothing. Sable knew what she was doing. 11 minutes. 12. The Ardent, near the rear of the column, took 2 hits in quick succession. Smaller fragments, neither individually significant, but the second opened a seam in her hull plating that her damage control crews were sealing on the fly while she kept moving. Her captain did not report it. Yun saw it on the damage display and noted that she had the right people in command of her ships. 13 minutes. Exit point in 90 seconds, Foss said. Her voice was steady. Yun made a note to put something in Foss's record when this was done. 14 minutes and 8 seconds after they had entered the outer band, the Indomitable broke into clear space on the far side of the Kalarath debris field. Behind her, in sequence, 18 vessels followed, some marked with fresh damage, one trailing debris from a compartment breach that had been sealed but not yet repaired, all of them intact and moving and armed. Yun looked at the tactical display. The Varath were 21 minutes away. Part 3. The choice they didn't expect. She had 21 minutes and 19 ships and a fleet that had just run a debris field at combat speed and come out the other side functional. Another commander might have used the 21 minutes to run, to put distance between her fleet and the Varath, and use the head start Foss had bought to reach the safety of the Kalarath system's outer boundary, where Yusef reinforcements were positioned. Yun spent 3 of the 21 minutes assessing her fleet's damage status. She spent 4 more calculating the Varath approach vector and the engagement geometry that would exist when they arrived at the exit point. She spent 1 minute thinking about what a Varath admiral expected a human fleet commander to do after surviving a debris run with a damaged column. Running was what they expected. She spent the remaining 13 minutes repositioning her fleet. "They're going to come out of that transit strung out," she told Halloran, showing him the geometry on the tactical display. 31 vessels going around a debris field at speed in a column with the pressure of a pursuit behind them. They're going to be spaced. The lead elements will be tighter than the rear. There will be a gap. Halloran studied the display. "You want to hit them in the gap. I want to hit the lead elements before the rear elements can close to support. If I can isolate the first third of their column, 10, 11 ships, against 19 of ours, in open space, with the geometry I choose rather than the geometry they chose." She looked at him. "That's a different engagement than the one they planned." Halloran was quiet for a moment. "The Harrier is at 80% drives. The Constance has reduced port side response. The Ardent has a sealed but unrepaired hull breach." "I know. We're not the fleet we were 40 minutes ago." "Neither," Yun said. "Are they? After the corner they just cut." She had no way of knowing that. It was a reasonable inference. A fleet moving fast around a debris field's outer edge in pursuit took risks of its own. And it turned out to be correct. The Varath had cut their corner aggressively, and 2 of their vessels had taken collision damage in the process. But she had not known it when she said it. She had said it because it was the kind of thing you said to your tactical officer when you needed him thinking about how to win rather than how badly the odds were stacked. Halloran had been her tactical officer for 4 years. He understood the distinction. "Firing solutions?" he said. "Get them ready. I want to fire the moment the lead elements clear the debris field. No hesitation, no waiting for them to form up. They come out. We're already shooting." "Understood." She looked at the clock, 17 minutes remaining. "And Halloran?" "Admiral, tell the fleet, not orders. Tell them what we're doing and why. Every captain, every crew. They ran that debris field because I asked them to. They deserved to know what it was for. Halloran looked at her for a moment. Then he nodded and opened the fleet channel. The Varath lead elements came out of their transit 19 minutes and 40 seconds after the Indomitable had cleared the exit point, 20 seconds faster than Yun had calculated, which meant their admiral had pushed harder than expected. She noted this and adjusted the opening fire timing by 10 seconds and did not otherwise change the plan. They came out strung out, as she had predicted. The first cluster, 9 vessels, tighter than the rest of the column, cleared the debris edge and began to spread into a combat formation. They had, Yun estimated, approximately 40 seconds before they achieved a formation tight enough to concentrate their fire effectively. She had been shooting for 30 of those seconds already. The opening salvo from 19 USEF vessels concentrated on 9 Varath ships that were still in transit formation and had not yet raised full combat shields was not a subtle thing. 2 Varath ships took catastrophic damage in the first exchange. 3 more took hits that would affect their combat performance for the remainder of the engagement. The remaining 4 achieved combat formation and began returning fire, and the Varath admiral, understanding now what had happened, understanding that the human fleet had not run, understanding that the geometry of this engagement was not the geometry he had planned, began pushing his rear elements to close the gap faster. The gap closed. Of course it closed. 31 Varath vessels against 19 humans, even with the damage differential and the opening advantage, was a weight of numbers that geometry could only partially offset. Yun had known this when she chose to fight. She had also known something the Varath admiral had not factored into his pursuit, that a fleet which had just run a debris field together, which had heard their admiral tell them why and trusted her enough to follow, was not fighting the way a fleet fights when it is executing a plan. It was fighting the way a fleet fights when it is angry. The distinction mattered. It mattered in the reaction times of gunners who had watched the Harrier take a hit and kept flying. It mattered in the damage control crews who had been sealing hull breaches at combat speed and were now doing the same thing while returning fire. It mattered in Captain Sable of the Constance, flying with reduced portside drive response, who positioned her ship on the Indomitable's flank and covered Yun's flagship through the heaviest exchange of the engagement with a precision that should not have been possible from a vessel with her damage profile. At the 40-minute mark of the engagement, the Varath admiral signaled withdrawal, not a rout, a considered withdrawal. The Varath disengaging in good order, covering their damaged vessels, pulling back toward the debris field with the discipline of a force that had been beaten but not broken. Their admiral was good. Yun respected him enough to let him go rather than pursue into debris with a damaged fleet. She watched the Varath withdraw and did a count of her own vessels. 19 in and 19 out. The Harrier had lost 4 people in the debris run. The Ardent's hull breach had worsened during the engagement, and she was venting atmosphere from one compartment, contained but serious. Every ship in the fleet had taken something. None of them had stopped. Halloran appeared at her shoulder. "The Varath admiral is going to spend a long time thinking about that debris run," he said. "Good," Yun said. "Let him think about it. Let him try to figure out what kind of fleet runs a debris field at combat speed and then turns around and picks a fight." "What kind does?" Yun looked at the tactical display, at the 19 green icons of her fleet holding position at the exit point of the Kalarath Passage, at the Varath withdrawing into the debris field they had thought would be their killing ground. "Ours," she said. Part 4. After. The debrief was 2 hours later, aboard the Indomitable, with her captains assembled in person where possible and on screen where it was not. Yun went through the engagement methodically, the ambush, the debris run, the repositioning, the engagement. She noted every decision she had made and the reasoning behind each one. She noted what had worked and what had nearly not worked, and what she would do differently if she faced the same situation again. She noted the Harrier's 4 dead by name. She noted every other casualty across the fleet by name. This took time. She did not abbreviate it. When she was done, Captain Nwosu of the Relentless said, "The debris run. When you ordered all stop, I thought you'd lost nerve." "I know," Yun said. "Then you asked us to run the outer band at combat speed with 12% collision probability per vessel." "Yes." "And then, instead of running for the boundary, you turned us around and picked a fight with 31 ships." "Yes." Nwosu was quiet for a moment. "The Verath Admiral planned that ambush very carefully," she said. "He covered every option. Reverse through the compression point. Too slow, they'd be on us. Push through the main field. Too dense, we'd shred ourselves. Push forward into their guns. Exactly what they wanted." She paused. "He didn't cover the outer band because nobody runs the outer band at combat speed." "No," Yun agreed. "So his entire plan was based on what a reasonable fleet commander would do." "Yes." Another silence. Then Nwosu said, with the tone of someone who had arrived at a conclusion she found both obvious and slightly unsettling. "That's the gap, isn't it? That's always the gap. They plan for what's reasonable." Yun looked at her for a moment. "Get some rest, Captain," she said. "We have a long way home."
If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more tales of humanity rising among the stars, please like, comment, and subscribe. New stories are released regularly here on Empyrean Chronicles.